Hi, everyone. Yeah, we had some technical difficulties. Thank you for joining me in End of Life Conversations and Reflections. Today, my guest is Shylene Schlackl. She's a communitarian, a community engaged artist, and a placemaker. She has immersed herself in the last decade in the study of death, dying, and the dead. She has a business called restsure, where she promotes a new understanding of death, dying, and the dead. For those of you who have a difficult time having a conversation around a death and dying, she has these amazing cards that we're going to talk about later. So watch the interview to the end. So welcome, Shylene. Thank you for having this conversation with me today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward.
Yeah, so it's not very often I get to like connect with people who are actively having the conversations around death and dying. So I'm really excited to learn more about you today. And I thought I would start by asking you about your experience as a child and if you had any memories of a death when you were a child that you still think about or that resonates with you still today.
Yeah. I thought at first when you asked me this question, I had a quick answer. And then I realized that as I've grown and studied death, my answers changed. So what you would have asked me 10 years ago, my quick response versus what I know now, what are the effects of death on my early life? So like my first initial was, I remember when a fish died. My babysitter was with us and our fish died. My parents had gone away for the weekend. And she had a little ceremony for us. We wrapped the fish in a tissue and we said special words. I think she lit a candle, and then we did the whole flush the fish. So, but she did this beautiful thing that helped us talk about it. And
Yeah.
I always remember that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so important to have a ritual around something so important, right? As a loss, even of a
Mm-hmm.
pet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And then going,
oh, go ahead.
no, so I was just wondering, going forward after that, was there a death that was life altering or life changing for you,
Mm-hmm.
or a death
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of resonates and sticks out for you now as you continue to do this work? Or,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just curious about that.
Well, there's kind of three big ones. So uh, I was told that my birth father had died when I was a child, and I carried that understanding until I was almost 40 of what I thought his death was. And when I got the truth of what actually had happened to him, it wasn't at all what I had been told. So the story I carried for my entire childhood and young adult life was one version of a idea. Really, it wasn't even anywhere close to the truth.
So you
And
weren't present for that.
no,
That
but thinking that your father had been killed,
Oh,
I
right.
lived with that until I was almost 40 years old. So when I got the truth of that story, it sort of shifted my understanding of a lot of things around myself. And then I had a friend die in grade 10, and to be in a community of mourners was a very different like experience. To feel a whole bunch of teenagers together grieving a friend was quite profound. And his parents didn't give us space to attend a service for him. So I can remember being in my room crying because I couldn't go to his funeral, and a star shone in the sky. And there was this like message that he knew I was thinking about him, and that it was okay that I wasn't at his service. And it's just like, whoa, whoa. Yeah. And that was sort of like this first indication of death talking to me in an okay way.
Yeah, so like the ceremony with the fish was really comforting for you. And then I guess you were hoping to have something similar like that for a loss of a friend at such a young age, and you didn't get that. But you found a way to kind of make that connection in another way that wasn't as defined as what you did for the fish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you said there was another death that stands out.
Um, as I've learned about myself, I died as a baby. I had crib death when I was 18 months old. And so there's a long, really fun story, fun, if you can, attached to why I didn't die or how I came back. And of course, as a young person, I knew that had happened, but I didn't investigate it. But as an older person now who's studying death, I've let myself do some journeying about it. And I've come to a different understanding about my relationship to death. and that I've been practicing my relationship to death since I was literally born. So, yeah.
Wow, that is so
Right?
fascinating.
Yeah, really fascinating. And then as an adult, the death of I had an elder die, and she died very publicly, I want to say. So when she had a lot of community, and we all wanted to be involved, but obviously you can't really have everyone involved. So she had one of her close mentors and sort of her adopted granddaughter create a community email chain, and she started reporting to us all through email about what was going on with Ayalina, so that we couldn't be with her, but we knew sort of the stages she was going through, and we got this bird's eye view, if you will, of her journey. And then she got to die at home with her grandchildren and her daughters and her close friends with her when she crossed over. And then she had a wake. She stayed at home for 3 days in her deathbed, with protocols taken. She was an expected home death. So she never had to go to a morgue. She got to have people come and visit her and pay our respects to her. And I got to see my first dead body. I think I might have seen my grandmother in a coffin, my great grandmother in a coffin, but that's not what this was. This was my friend in her bed, supported by love, supported by photographs, supported by flowers, and spirit was all over it. And the idea that she never went to a morgue, that she wasn't removed from her family, that she was never alone as a person, as her vessel was never alone, and it felt like her spirit was never alone. She got supported in her journey, and in a way that I'd never seen. And uh, it just shifted how I saw how beautiful death could be when we allowed it. When we allowed it.
Yeah, and none of the sterile environment of a hospital, but like sounds like she died in her beautiful surroundings at home with people that she loved. And then you got a chance to kind of um, have a departure kind of, yeah, ceremony or go visit her. I mean, her spirit, let her spirit kind of, yeah, through to the next realm. So, and so when did you start this journey with like studying death? Like what, um,
Well, it was actually right around that time that Ayalina died. So around 2013, 2012, well, maybe even sooner than that, actually. In 2010, I met a woman. I was ran an art class at my daughter's school. And the principal asked me if this mom could come to our art club. She was recovering from cancer, and she used to be a painter, and she needed somewhere to paint. It's like, of course. So I basically became really good friends with Death Walking, because it wasn't less than a year later that she died. And her and I became very close. And I learned a lot about being sick and being in denial of death. She had a fascination with being a miracle, which was beautiful because she had this passion about her. She didn't want to talk about the fact that she was dying. And she talked about where she was going to go next and all these things she was going to do. And she was super present and not depressed about it.
yeah.
But retrospectively, she hadn't planned it all. So the dismay and the disruption that put into our community, because there was no plans. And she'd been dying for 8 years. And I
Wow.
thought,
Yeah.
oh, what a disservice we do. It was beautiful in one way because she lived every day.
Yeah.
But there was a disservice because she detached from what it meant when she was going to not be here anymore. So there was a lot of things not attended to, a lot of decisions not made, a lot of extra pain was caused, extra grieving was caused because of the amount of work we all needed to do as a community to process her death.
It's so interesting. I was just having this conversation yesterday with a colleague of mine where, like someone has a cancer diagnosis and maybe they've been given a short prognosis.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden they're trying these new treatments that are being offered and they're dying for years. They're not actually necessarily living their life. It sounds like she lived her life. But there are people that are stuck in limbo because they thought they were dying, then they started a new treatment, and now they're not dying. So they're not even thinking they're ever going to die because they've had so many treatments that have worked to
Mm-hmm.
extend that life of theirs. So it does put people, the new treatments that are being provided, put people in that really uncertain stage of, am I dying? Am I living? Do I plan ahead? Or if I didn't plan and I lived, maybe it was something to do with, sometimes people think if they deny it, it won't happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting that there are lots of people stuck in that scenario, and it's really a difficult time. I've had a patient tell me, like, I wish I had died when I was told I was going to die, because I gave everything away. I gave away my clothes. Now I don't have clothes to wear. And I've been living now because of this new treatment that I didn't think I was going to get. And so she is like at a loss and actually quite disturbed by the fact that her life is prolonged
Mm-hmm.
when she was told she would be dying. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's really interesting, that place where people are. It's unique and it's difficult to navigate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've had these experiences and it's led you to the study of death and dying. And I'm just curious, like, when you think about your own death, do you have any um, fears around it or hopes around it? Like, when you think about your own experience,
Yeah.
what comes to
Uh,
mind?
well, again, because of the work I've been doing, it's a lot cleaner and clearer for me now than it was, 8 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it was around having the conversations with my loved ones about what I don't want and what's important to me. And so through my own study, I've created a program and a company, and I've had my family be my guinea pigs. And I'm the one that has to do what I'm telling other people to do, because it's
Right.
like I can't go about selling an idea if I haven't done the work myself. So I put a lot of things in place, and I feel like I can rest sure every night. So I've organized my will. I've organized my life insurance. I've told my family, my children, my husband, my siblings, my mother what I want. I've planned my funeral. So I have a binder that has all this information in it. And I've made contingency plans for my company. Um, uh, there's a lot of things taken care of.
Yeah.
So now that's all that's left is like the actual dying and death.
Mm.
I'm afraid of pain. I
Yeah.
hate pain.
Mhm.
So that's the tricky one for me. And then I'm confused about the whole, like, I wasn't raised a Christian, but the Christian idea of if we were to take our own life, you might go to hell or something. So
Mhm.
with MAID, and
Yeah.
this idea that if I was to be diagnosed with something, I could make a decision to use MAID, and then I wouldn't have to suffer for a long time. My family wouldn't have to watch me suffer.
Mm.
But then I've watched people who have not had MAID as an option, and they went through a journey. And I think that journey they went through while they were dying helped clear a lot. And
Yeah.
so I'm I'm apprehensive about saying I know anything about how it's going to go down or what's in my best interest. My
Right.
body, my soul, my family's. I don't know, right? That whole I don't
Yeah.
know part,
Yeah. We don't
like
know. We don't know. Yeah.
I don't
Absolutely.
know. So
But you've done so many things that are necessary to make sure that when that happens, that you are more focused on actually experiencing it as opposed to tending to your insurance papers or your funeral arrangements or your obituary or whatever. So that
yeah,
you're going to be so present when it happens, it sounds like. And that's a gift that you give yourself and your family,
yeah,
the ability to stay fully present. And this whole made conversation, I think we'll have to have another interview about it, because I've also grappled with what does that mean religious, religion wise, and
yeah.
what happens to your soul and all that. And then I've also been part of supporting and caring for people who have chosen that path, and it's been in conflict with what I believe. So it's been a really fascinating experience. And then all this idea around some cultures thinking that the suffering at dying is atoning for sins and clearing your karma. And how do we move forward and navigate all of that? And maybe we'll have to have another conversation.
Yeah, and that's the part that blows my mind open. Like, like what is after this? What is this? You know, what is this? Like what does it mean to be alive? And what is it?
Yeah.
I've heard it say something like death isn't the opposite of life. It's the opposite of birth,
Mm.
right? So the idea that when a child comes through, we're not freaking out about where did this child come from? Like what is
Yeah.
going on? Like we're not afraid. We're actually like, this is a miracle.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, we're pretty afraid of what might happen afterwards. For me now, I've come to understand that it's probably the same place. Wherever I was before I was born,
Yeah.
probably the same place I'm going after I die.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And
So
so I've been living with that idea, and I'm finding coronavirus very interesting, because the
yeah.
idea of corona, I think in another language, means crown. So
Right.
this idea of us crowning and death coming through coronavirus, and
Mhm.
this idea that consciously we're being forced right now to talk about death. Death
Yeah.
is literally on the table, and it's the thing we're all afraid of. And if it's corona, I mean, we're crowning. So like, if you think about the chakra system, it's like, wow, like what? Like I'm kind of, my mind is blown again by this whole thing.
Yeah.
It almost feels magical. Like I don't want to like make
Yeah.
fun of anybody who has died during corona and has to have died
Yeah.
alone or died without their loved ones and not being able to have a service, a life service.
Yeah.
That part, I'm working through that with my colleagues right now. How can we can provide some healthy online ways to grieve, to mourn, to celebrate, and recognize that something's happening to us,
Yes.
right? Even for you to want to be making these videos during this time, for me to have launched Death of Cards in December 2020, there was like a foreshadowing that I could not have. Spirit is talking to me. Look what just
Yes.
happened when we tried to have these videos. Like, Spirit is talking to me. What Susan and my business partner and I speak of is that death is calling us, and
Yes.
not my death, but death as a
Yes.
concept, death as a death
Yeah.
as part of
Saying
life.
where I'm here, don't ignore me. I'm here. Like, let's talk about me. It's okay to talk
Yeah.
about me. I think that's what I'm gaining from this. And the coronavirus, like the sorrow I feel like is so heavy within me. Like I think that was the instigator for me to have these conversations, is that I can't tell you the sorrow and the depths of my pain knowing that people are not dying supported. And I thought, well, we need to have these conversations. And like you said, Death is saying, here we are, let's talk about it. Like, let's not ignore me because I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. I am here. So, I mean, we're just talking about something that's present in our lives, but how do we be conscious of it, and how do we honor it, and how do we respect it, as opposed to, run away from it or hide from it? And there was something you mentioned earlier around birthing, and I feel like when you're dying, it's labor. It's like the breathing changes, and there's a process that you go through, just like during birth, with your breath, and people going through that to transition as well. So very
Yes.
fascinating. Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it does feel beautiful. This feels like we are awakening to
Yeah.
something, that there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with death. There's nothing wrong with dying. This isn't going against anything. In fact, it's the pact you made. Like when you said, okay, yeah, I'm going to be
Yeah.
a earthling, you
Yeah.
knew without a doubt that you had to die. There's no other option.
Yeah. Yeah. But we act like there is, right?
Right. And,
Yeah.
when we were looking at Death of Cards, one of the things we said in our little bio was, we plan for all of these things. We plan for retirement. We plan for graduation. We plan for summer holidays. Some of these things don't actually happen. Some of us don't get married. Some of us don't have children, but we
Yeah.
plan for these things. But
Yeah.
we don't plan for dying. And guess what? It's the one we can actually know is going to happen.
Absolutely.
Let's just dive in and get more authentic and sort of dismystify, like take the mystery out of it.
Yeah.
Take the fear out if we can. This
Yeah.
violent idea about death, that it's this, we've glorified it too in our culture, right? Like how many of us have seen gratuitous violence that led to the death of someone? And,
Right.
it's said that our children witness that like 1,200 times by the time they're 14. But to see an actual dead body or to actually talk about grandma dying, that's taboo. That
Oh,
twists me up. That makes me frustrated. Our children can play these violent video games, kill people, but we can't talk about dying at home. That,
yeah.
that doesn't make any sense.
Well, you're out there to change that conversation.
Aren't I? Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, like, you mentioned a little bit about what you think happens after we die, but like, I'm just curious, like, if you can elaborate, what do you think happens to you? What's going to happen to you, or what do you hope is going to happen to you after you die?
Again, I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I have an idea about the services and the funeral and having people see me dead. That's important for me. That
It's
I'm not.
important for you to be seen when you're dead, like your dead vessel, like your
Yeah,
body.
yeah,
You want people to be able to come in and
yeah,
witness that.
yeah. In a natural setting, in as natural of a setting as we can make it. And I've witnessed that now a few times in my life, and it is the most profound, powerful, connected way of moving on as a family too. Because when you see a dead body, Nana's not in there.
Yeah,
You feel it.
yeah,
Although both my grandparents and my stepfather, all died at home a few years ago. Within 18 months of each other, they all died at home. And what that did for my family, I have this vivid memory of my grandmother actively dying. She hadn't eaten for a couple of days. She wasn't speaking anymore. And my cousin in the lazy boy reclining chair beside my grandmother's hospital bed, breastfeeding her son. So 3 generations together in that room was magic. It felt like magic because nothing was wrong.
yeah,
Not for the children, not
yeah,
for us middle-aged people, and not for the elderly, not for the dying, and not for the caregivers. The caregivers weren't trying to deny what was happening.
yeah.
We were
So
all empowered. We were all empowered through love and presence. And a loving presence is, I think, what we can cultivate. We all love being loved. We all love when someone pays attention to us. So I
yeah,
want to be paid attention to. I want to be allowed
yeah,
to die,
yeah.
right?
That's amazing.
Allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what fear does. It's like it removes that connection. But when you step into it and you're supporting and witnessing, bearing witness to, and supporting someone while just being natural, like breastfeeding or doing what you need to do, allowing that person to be part of life until they die, as opposed to negating and removing and denying them those last moments. So that does sound actually
I
quite.
saw this picture today. I saw this picture of an elderly woman being given affection by someone she loves that was all covered in mask and stuff with corona. And they
Yeah,
were literally touching faces. And the young person had a mask and like a plastic shield, and the old person was raw. And she was just there, and their heads were together. And I saw very clearly that I think one of the lessons, if I may, that's happening right now is we were already isolating our seniors. We were already isolating our loved ones. We were already removing ourselves from the reality that they were aging in place and they weren't being coveted or taken care of or revered or held in the love that they deserve to be held in. And
yeah,
now that we're not allowed, now we're angry. I'm like, well, wait a second, you guys, you were doing this to them before.
yeah,
You just didn't know you were doing it. So it's
yeah.
a fascinating time. It's just, I feel like we're being blown apart right now to look at what matters and what doesn't matter.
Yeah. And people that are in nursing homes, like I'm like, yes, let's change how we honor and care and support the elderly, in our community. We've kind of put them in a nursing home and forgotten, like, just generalizing.
Yes.
And then the environment is not conducive to love and support and nurturing. And that's the part of life that I feel is so neglected. And so this is shedding light on that. And just like you said, like this is just like we've been, yeah, now we want what we can't have, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And right now I'm just seeing, I'm likening it to when maybe in the 50s and in the 60s, it was still considered okay to have an orphanage where lots of babies lived with only a few caregivers. And we thought that was fine. Those children needed somewhere to go. Where else would they go? Now we recognize the damage we did from an attachment place to all those babies that weren't getting enough love.
yeah,
Are we not doing that now to our seniors? Right?
yeah,
Wow. 50 years ago, we thought that's okay. Those babies need somewhere to go. Those nurses love them. Those homes are built for them. Same with the seniors place. We know the caregivers care, but they can't possibly give the one-on-one attention that we all deserve. Attachment.
yeah. A nursing
attachment.
home should be like paradise to me. It should be like your last year should be in paradise, just like
Paradise.
when people come to hospice and they're like, this is a place I get to die. It's like a home and it's got volunteers that sing to you or do healing touch and get a
Yes,
home cooked meal. And
yes,
there are all these people there to support and nurture you. Well, that's how I see a nursing home should be. And
yes.
I just do hope things change.
Well, and
And
that's my vision for restsure. So restsure in me is this picture of
mm,
like beautiful death, like surrounded with beautiful fabrics and flowers and perhaps even in nature. And it's just glorious. It's like the front of the most highfalutin glamour design magazine you've ever seen. And the person's just laid back and just beauty. It's just, they're resting sure and everyone around them can rest sure. And it's just this sense of ease and love and beauty. Ah, I mean, maybe
yeah.
it's, but that's where I'm going with this idea, you know?
Absolutely. And not just those last days, but leading up to it, like let's make some ceremony and pomp about it. And
Yes.
let's get together as a collective and support this person that's going on this amazing journey that we're all going to embark on. And we all want to have a send off like that, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
nice.
So tell me a little bit about your business. So what do you provide? Like how do you support people? What are
Yeah,
some of the things that you do? And then I want to talk about these cards that are really, really
yeah,
cool cards.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's super cool.
Yeah.
So, in studying death for the last 10 years or so and looking at the rules, there's a lot of rules around where you're allowed and how you're allowed, and you need this document and that document. And so learned all of those things and started really seeing the importance of different areas of your life being taken care of. So we identified these 8 areas and we specialize in a couple of them, but there's other sections that we can let you know what needs to be done and we can't support you. We can lead you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then I recognized that advanced care plans are really important, like very, very important. But bigger than that was just the normalcy of this conversation. So I tried to design a program and tried to create a tangible product. And I didn't have the language or the skills to really build that. But I recognized what I had done is identified these 8 sections. So I was like, okay,
Mhm.
how can we streamline this and turn it into just a casual tool? And so that's where Death of Cards came, was a way of
Mhm.
looking at this in the most stripped down version that we could come up with. And so there's 8 sections and we ask you to look at them from an inspirational way, from a contemplative way, from a conversational way, and then from a directional way. And if you could touch on a tiny bit of each of those 8 sections, you will have done a big service for your family.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to get her all done. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
But if your family at least knows and they all know the same thing, this is the other piece.
Mhm.
We have a tendency to icing our cakes. So you like chocolate, so I'll put chocolate icing on your cake. But my other friend likes vanilla, so I'll put vanilla icing on her cake.
Yeah.
And so what's most important is the cake, and that the cake's the same cake. Because we don't do our families any favors when we don't give them the whole truth.
Yeah.
So these conversations being done individually like we're doing, but then also collectively. So the idea of having a family circle where you really
Yeah.
listen, where you really listen. And let's use these cards as just conversation tools.
Mhm.
Conversation tools. And maybe action-based tools if you chose that. If you chose
Yeah.
to do the work, because you
Yeah.
said you can lead a horse to water, right?
Yeah.
So people can, if you do any of it, you're going to help your family and
Yeah.
yourself and yourself.
Yeah. And I'm a cards person. I have oracle cards. I'm a tarot reader. I have tarot cards. And when I saw these cards, I thought, well, I'm just gonna like pull up cards, like
Yeah, love it.
randomly, and I'm
Yeah.
just going to.
What you get?
I got inspiration, and it says grief is love unexpressed.
Yeah,
So then how do you work through your grief by expressing it, And so I could journal about it or I could have a conversation about it.
exactly.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
love these cards and I'm so
thank
glad you
you.
made them because I feel like I'm going to be using them in some
Mm,
of my work and my
mhm.
personal work as well.
Love it. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm hoping to do. And I'm really hoping that they actually stay out, like that people leave them out like tarot, where people can grab the
Yeah.
deck at any random time and that it's put on the table in a playful way. Like the design that we did on the front of it's death looking up. It's not death looking right at you. It's looking a little bit up. There's a rainbow of color. So it's about going through all of those pieces. And that little design at the bottom is called an anilome. And it's about the journey. It's about how life takes us through these journeys, and we go around and it seems like we're getting closer to the center, and then we come up and then we weave around, and then those 3 dots are it's done.
Oh, wow.
Right. So there's a little sacredness in there that's hidden. And also within the deck of cards, we're going through your chakra system. So we don't speak to that anywhere, but if you'll notice the coloring,
Yes,
we're
I
starting
noticed the colors.
we're starting at a root level, talking about your life. We're moving up into our belief systems, and we're moving up into our family relationships. We're moving up into our heart center, and then we're moving up into our throat, and then we're moving up into our third eye, and then we're moving up into our crown. And it's about tying those all together. And we're doing it subliminally as well as really on purpose. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. So how can someone get a hold of these cards?
You can find us on social media. So we're on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a website, restsure.ca, and you can send us a message and we can get you a deck of cards. Yeah, we have a senior rate and a student rate, as well as employed rate, to make sure that we can get these in everyone's hands.
Yeah, I feel like everyone should have them in their household so that they just have to have a conversation,
Yeah. Keep it light, and I said yesterday that I'm very comfortable with this conversation, and I do kind of make jokes. I do that on purpose. We need to lighten up, people, because, it's nothing's wrong here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that about you, because you can just, it's like, you don't have to be a certain way to talk about death. You can talk about it and joke about it even.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're having a casual conversation, sometimes.
Well, we also say that in one of the instruction cards, that this is a hard topic, and some of us will need assistance. So some of the other services that we offer with restsure are end of life planning, just sitting down and having these conversations and figuring out through those 8 sections, what would you be best served to get taken care of now? It might be a will. It might be an advanced care plan. It might be funeral plans. It might literally be some skeletons that you haven't dealt with, or some regrets that you need to clean up. And there's a book called The American Book of Living and Dying, and in there it talks about the different types of pain that we carry at death, and it mostly relates to the work we haven't done in our life. So if we want to have less pain at death, it's important that we've taken care of things. And that's, again, what restsure is about, is things we need to take care of. I'm also a community engaged artist, so I like to make place. So I've helped with building special gardens in families' properties. I've helped with making memorial gazebos and poetry corners and sacred mosaics that people put in their gardens or even in the graveyards. And my business partner is a celebrant, so she works at helping people have beautiful end-of-life ceremonies and rituals. And then the 2 of us do this guidance. We're not coaches, we're guides. And a hummingbird just came to the window.
Oh, wow.
Just saying.
And I was like, what does this mean? Yeah. So
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, this is wonderful. So people can go to restsure.ca and find out about your resources, order your cards. I'm just so grateful that you're there to guide people and have these conversations and do it with a bit of wit and lightness about it. And I would love to have you back to talk about, like I said, a lot came up, and we just have limited time right now, but I'd love to talk about MAID or any other topics that would be interesting for the audience. So
love to. I'd love to tell the story of my baby death one day, because it's kind of interesting, but it's a whole, when you start telling stories, it can go for a long time.
Yeah, we should definitely do that. I mean, let's do that. Let's plan it and let's do it.
Great. Well, thanks for inviting me. This was easy and fun.
It was easy and fun for sure, for me too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, you too.